Lucy Owen and Nick Westrate, welcome to Cultural Attaché.
Hi, thanks for
Hi.
having us.
So we're here to talk about the Streetcar Project, which for people who do not know is an unabridged version of Tennessee Williams' play, A Streetcar Named Desire, performed by a cast of four with no props and no set.
Yes.
So I guess my first question is, artistically, what made A Streetcar Named Desire the play for which this kind of setup would work?
Mm. I think that we started with the play. I started with the play. It just came out of a desire to work on this play and work on the character I'm playing, which is Blanche. Streetcar has been a pet favorite play of mine for a long time, like it is for a lot of people. And Blanche has been a favorite character of mine for a long time, again, like it is for many people, because she, I think, is one of the greatest parts ever written, and certainly the greatest for a woman. Nick and I frequently refer to her as the female Hamlet, and I stand by it.
Hmm.
So I just had a desire to work on her, and it came out of the pandemic, a dry time for a lot of creatives. And I just picked up the play and started bringing it, carrying it around with me wherever I went. And I started asking friends to read it with me. And then I asked Nick to come and witness our reading it.
Hmm.
And Nick and I have collaborated many times before, and he's my favorite and perfect collaborator for something so close to my heart, something I love so much. And we developed this slowly together out of necessity and out of what was available to us.
Yeah, that's kind of a rule. We used whatever we had available. And so the main thing we had available were these actors and their voices and their bodies. And what we ended up finding out was that it's a great language play, Streetcar. It's not like the characters say a lot. They tell you what they're feeling. They tell you what they want, what they need, what they desire. And we started treating it like Shakespeare. You see Shakespeare performed a lot on a bare stage with nothing. And so we started wondering, like, what if you did that with Williams? Like the great language playwrights can carry that because the things that the people say carry New Orleans with them, carry the South with them, carry 1947 with them, carry all of those things. And so we started working there. And then we also started working in rehearsal with music. Tennessee Williams scores the play very brilliantly in his stage directions. He talks about a blue piano growing to a swelling crescendo. And so we started playing music while we rehearsed. So when you do come and see the show, you'll see that we knew we could always travel with a Bluetooth speaker. So there's a lot of music that plays throughout the action. There's a soundscape. So the entire production is really an aural experience.
Well, you mentioned that this was a part that you wanted to play for so long. I guess in terms of any major production, unless you're a Jessica Lange or a Blythe Danner or any number of other people, it's very difficult to do something other than, a black box space.
Right.
Um, how much of what you two are doing is motivated by the commercial demands of what theater is or how it is defined presently, not just in New York, but frankly around the country?
Yeah. So much of the theater's changing so much, the demand for it is changing so much, and it's quite expensive to make. And so I think many theater companies rely on a star model. You have to have a famous person in one of these roles in order to make it viable financially, which is really understandable. But what it means is that working class actors, of which I am proudly a member of that class, don't get an opportunity to engage with these this poetry. And that's just such a shame to me. It's a shame to me personally, but it's also a shame to me because there's so many good actors who I want to see
Mm.
play the big, good, gorgeous roles. I don't I don't only want to see the same 10 or so incredibly famous actors play all the same roles,
Yeah.
personally.
And and also we made the priority the actor.
Mm.
So we have an interesting funding model. We don't have any commercial producers. We don't have an institutional theater attached. So we call it a direct to artist model. When people buy their tickets, all that money goes directly to the six artists involved. So that's the four actors, myself and Tennessee Williams, the most important artist, because we always pay for the rights with the estate. And we think that People really respond to that. People really respond to the idea of sitting down in a chair and knowing, like, I paid a living wage with union health and pension benefits to the artists in front of me, and they are in return going to give me this piece. And that's the model that we found. But yeah, it's a really different way of going about it.
And it makes theater, which has traditionally been a communal experience, feel that communal experience is so present when you, as the audience, know that you're paying for the people in front of you. And we, the artists, know that we are in an exchange with our audience, that we are indebted to you. You've
Hmm.
paid our wage that day.
Yeah.
So many thoughts go through my mind as you were answering that last question. And one of them was, I guess it was this year's Academy Awards, where a filmmaker or a screenwriter won an Oscar for a small budgeted film that did
Yes.
well and said, you don't have to just make the big monolithic, IP driven properties that permeate the theaters. And I'm thinking we're having this conversation a day, I think, after it was announced that Back to the Future, the musical, is closing in January. It was capitalized for over $20 million and is not recouping a cent.
Yeah.
Right. Isn't it wild?
Yeah.
There's is I understand the idea behind, established products like a Back to the Future, but imagine if Tennessee Williams was living in a world where only already established IP was what was performed. How would a Tennessee Williams at that time or a Tennessee Williams today ever find his voice or his feet in theater?
Yeah. It's an
What a
amazing question. I don't think he
great.
would. And I think that we're in an era that is people. I think there's a scarcity mentality. There's a lot of fear right now, and so people are reaching towards something that they think is a sure thing, and
Mm.
that's a bummer. Yeah.
It's so disappointing. It's so disappointing for all artists personally. It means every actor I know has, gone through periods, really, really established actors are losing their health insurance, writers are losing their mortgages. Um, Artists are really, really struggling. Working class artists are really struggling. And I think this scarcity I mean, there are many reasons, but this scarcity mentality is
Yeah,
one
and
of the
we're
reasons.
coming out of a pandemic. We're
Yeah,
coming out of a strike.
strike.
It's multiple
Yeah.
strikes, and it's really hard for people to get back on their feet, and that's why we're really moved by all the support we've had from the community in New York and now the community in LA,
Yeah.
buying tickets and coming to see this show. Because I think you can never change the path. We talk a lot about path dependency in the arts. You can never change the path unless you actually try something new.
Right.
Well, it's interesting because, I would guess it was a few years ago that Elevator Repair Service or repair company, I'm not sure if I'm getting the
Fair
name right,
service, yeah.
Repair Service started doing just staged readings of
Mhm.
novels like The Great Gatsby.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like, that seems like a great idea given how much people are listening to books on tape, but it isn't necessarily what one would think of as theater. But it feels like there is at least a desire on artists' part, if not on also on audience part, to not be hit with the bombast that is usually associated with big commercial theater.
Yeah, it's like we live in such a visual age. We're
Mhm.
constantly looking at this screen that's showing, showing, showing. And in this production that we do, it asks the audience to really listen, and it turns on the imagination in a way that I think people have forgotten. And you see people like drinking water again, and they're it's scratching this itch that they forgot they needed.
Yeah. Our audience, it's been galvanizing to interact with our audiences as we do this because it's a risk for us. I've never done theater quite in this way before.
Mhm.
There are times in which I'm giving something away, but I'll tell you anyway. We truly turn off the lights. It goes dark and we force people to listen.
Mm.
And I think that because our audiences they get to engage with their own relationship with the play and their own relationship with the characters,
Mm.
partially because they're listening and their imaginations are turned on. But also, I think and I've heard this from a few people, it is partially because there isn't the most famous woman in the world, the most famous man in the world playing Blanche and Stanley.
Yeah.
And so they get to see and hear the play, really, really hear the play primarily. They get to focus on hearing the play instead of focusing on celebrity or a visual, something spectacular visually.
And the thought runs into my mind again, sort of on the same beat as an unknown Tennessee Williams. It's not like when a Streetcar Named Desire was first on Broadway, it had the best known actor in the world as Stanley Kowalski.
He wasn't at the time. And it's also interesting that you bring that up because for so many years I thought that this play was about a sexy guy, and it's really not what the play is about. And it was the dawn of method acting, and you had Elia Kazan directing Marlon Brando, and a lot of what the play became about was Marlon's behavior off the line, which drove notoriously Jessica Tandy a bit crazy. And what's interesting in the way we do it, because we don't have stuff, we don't have props. Because of that, you can't do anything off the line. The actors are always on the line, and by on the line, I mean they're playing what is written. You can't really add anything because there's nothing there to add. I mean, there is, of course, in the production behavior and moments when people aren't speaking, but it lends to a different kind of relationship in the room, and you start, as Lucy said, to realize the things that the play is actually concerned with, which aren't a sexy guy trying to light a cigarette.
So is that to suggest that maybe we've gotten a Streetcar Named Desire wrong all these years?
Yes, it is to suggest that. It is absolutely to suggest that. Yes. It's a play about two women, and I've never seen a production until this one that we have a play about two sisters, and that's ultimately what it's about, in my opinion.
I, I haven't seen every production, so I don't know. I've seen some gorgeous productions. Gorgeous, gorgeous. And I've seen beautiful, beautiful performances, but I don't know if I've ever seen a streetcar that was an ensemble. And ours is an ensemble. It's about four people. It's about their relationships. It's about the devastation that they experience together.
Yeah.
So if we take, Nick's premise that it is about two sisters, how does that change your approach as someone who is playing Blanche to how you interact not just with Stella, but how you interact with Stanley?
Well, I guess I don't know that it has, I didn't come at the play thinking this is a play about sisters. It was a thing that I discovered. And so I've discovered the relationships. I've discovered the relationship with Stanley based on the person who is playing Stanley. I've discovered the relationship with Stella based on the person playing Stella, Brad Coed and Mallory Portnoy. And I've discovered Mitch based on who is playing Mitch. And currently it's James Russell. And it's been such a great privilege to discover these relationships with our ensemble, and to discover the play through these relationships with our ensemble.
And it's interesting too, when you start with actors, instead, like actors are usually the last person invited into the room. By the time, and I'm an actor, my profession is an actor mainly, and I am always baffled by the fact that by the time we enter the rehearsal room, all of these decisions have been made. The clothes, the lighting, the set, everything has been decided what this production is going to do. And then we have to kind of do a magical puzzle in our minds and figure out how we fit in and how we contribute. And this model started with the people and I think that the relationship between an actor and a playwright is physical. The person who knows the most about the writer is the actor, because they run that text through their body. And until you do that, you don't understand Shakespeare or Ibsen or Williams fully, because that's what it takes to understand them fully, is to make those sounds with your body in space. So the actor has the most expertise, and we're most often treated as the person with the least expertise. And we're trying to flip that.
So does that make you, as an actor who is directing, a more sympathetic, a more understanding director than someone who is not who experienced as being an actor?
I hope so. And I think that there are lots of I hope so.
Yes.
I hope so.
Yes.
I understand what the actors are doing. I understand I know what it's like to get a note that sounds a certain way from a director, and I try to not do that ever.
And Nick is just incredibly respectful of actors. he loves actors. He knows how important they are. He's incredibly respectful of each actor and their own process. Knowing that he has his own process as an actor,
Yeah.
he's able, I think, to tailor his direction to the individual, which is a unique and profoundly valuable trait in a director.
And we met working together as actors,
Yes.
and Brad Coed, who plays Stanley, and I met working together as actors. So we have an acting relationship, acting vocabulary together already,
Yes.
and a way of working that you do as an actor. And yeah, it's so fun. I was invited here to work on this project by the actors. So I just come in service of them and what they need to do. But I think this all goes back to your question about discovering that it's about two sisters. We discovered that because of what was happening in the room between these people, and because we didn't have a lot in between Tennessee and the actors. So that channel is open a bit more.
Yeah.
And hopefully then the channel is open for the audience a bit more.
So you've performed this play in multiple different venues, and we'll get to the nature of the venue in a moment. But given that you've had multiple audiences see and experience this way of telling a streetcar named Desire, how do you think the play is resonating that is unique to your production with audiences, as opposed to how it might have resonated had there been props, had there been a set?
That is interesting.
Mm.
Well, I think I'll repeat myself a little bit in saying that a lot of what we hear from people is, it was like I was hearing the play for the first time. It feels quite current, actually. Especially I'm not wearing a period costume. There's nothing to indicate the time period. I'm not pretending that I don't know how to use a dial phone with an actual pretend dial phone. I don't have a cigarette case. I don't have an old-timey bottle of bourbon that I'm sneaking. And so it feels quite current to people.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels quite current to me, which is just, Tennessee Williams is an extraordinary writer. We've been working on this play for a long time now. I mean, I've been working on it really working on it for over 2 years now. And we've been in rehearsal again, and we discover new things every time. After 2 years, we discover new things all the time.
And great writers like Williams and Chekhov, it makes me think of Chekhov especially. We're writing for the future. We're interested in the future. We're interested in how Tennessee Williams has a beautiful quote in the preface of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof that personal lyricism is the call from prisoner to prisoner, from the cells in which each of us are sentenced for our lives. And that call that he's making across the decades, across the generations, it's so amazing. Like, poetry can really do that. It's why we keep doing Shakespeare. It's why we keep doing Shaw. And I love that. And in terms of audience experience, one of my favorite things, the first time we workshopped this, we did a little week-long workshop in a barn in upstate New York. And one of our friends, Chelsea, said, "Oh, the streetcar can only happen in a barn. It can only," and we at other spaces, people have said this again, it can only happen in a clothing store. It can only happen in a warehouse. Mm-hmm. And we call it the Chelsea experience. And we want to give everyone the Chelsea experience, which is feeling like this is the only room this play can and should ever take place. And that's really exciting for us in terms of what site specific means,
Right. So I guess that begs the question, how do you determine what are the locations best suited? When you're seeking out of venues in Los Angeles, because you're doing three shows in Frogtown and an abandoned airplane hangar, I believe, and then three shows in Venice. And anybody who knows Venice you don't need to know anything more than that it's in Venice. So I'm wondering, how do you select those venues so that you can maximize the experience both for all of you as a creative team and for the audience as well?
It started off with people would come to the show and then they would offer us venues. They would say, "Oh, I have a clothing store. I have a movie theater. I have a church." We're about to, after LA, we go to Yale University to do it in 3 spaces around the Yale campus. And last fall, we were doing it in an old belt factory, and a woman named Jennifer Newman saw the show and she said, "Would you like to do this at Yale?" And we said, "We would love to do this at Yale." And it's been like that. And the Venice venue we found through a great actor named Jason Butler Harner. It's owned by a beautiful artist named Ilan Day, and it's like this big warehouse artist workshop, craft space, art gallery space. And we found the airplane hangar through another friend. And it's what we found is certain spaces, we've trial and error. Certain spaces have too much information in the space. Like we did it in a beautiful church in New York City. And it was just too much information that was working against the play.
Right. A church cannot not be a church.
Yeah, it's really a church. So sometimes the barer they are, the starker they are, it's more helpful for the audience can has a blanker canvas on which to project their imaginings.
Yes.
But each one acts as a prism for the play. And we've done this play for as few as 20 people and for as many as 200. And so they're really different sized shows, and we learn something. The performance changes, and how you communicate with a smaller audience or a larger audience changes what you're doing. And we've really found all sorts of different things out about the play by doing it in different spaces for different sizes of people.
What have you found out about audiences? And the reason I ask that question is it's like I'm so annoyed with people who in the middle of a show pick up these things
Oh,
to text or to take pictures or respond to stuff. I am constantly telling people to turn their phones off. Well, I'm probably much to the annoyance of the people around me. But it's like, what have you learned about your audience? Because you can't be present with this kind of presentation of a Streetcar Named Desire, or any play for that matter, if you're going to allow electronics to be a distraction.
I would say it has not ever one time been a problem for us, not once. We have never, ever had an issue with it, not once. LA may be a different thing for us.
yeah.
I hope not. Just as born and raised in LA, I hope not.
I'm Californian, but I think that partially the way that our stage will be set up in both of these locations, the audience will be privy to one another. You will be watchful of each other. You will be looking at each other. We're in not quite in the round, but something resembling the round. And so, and we don't have stage lights. So you may not be in total darkness. You may be lit sometimes. And that acts as I think our audiences have been so respectful.
Yeah, there's like a different focus that happens in that situation. I really believe that like theater is just an event that happens in a room, and we just go to different rooms. And when that separation, that proscenium separation, or like Lucy described, that light separation isn't really there for us. When you come to see the show, you'll experience we're really all just people in a room, and the few people are going to speak. And then that's the event. That's what happens.
Yeah.
And so the audience concept, and maybe because of what I said before about this different part of the imagination being turned on, it I think it ignites something in people that makes them not want to look at their phones or not want to be distracted. And hopefully the performance is good enough that they won't. Not that I mean, like, there are jerks everywhere, but
also they're good point, Nick.
Thanks.
I think that the experience is quite vulnerable for the actors. Performing is always quite vulnerable. This particular way of performing, we have nothing to hide behind. Nothing. It is so vulnerable for us. And it's sort of vulnerable for the audience too. And I feel quite taken care of by our audiences. I feel met by them thus far, that my vulnerability is really appreciated and tended to by our audiences. Fingers crossed they will be here.
Having not seen the production, but when you're describing an audience, let's say surrounding you on three sides, or however it's constructed, and that the audience is sometimes in the lights, aren't you basically sort of forcing the audience to see not just in themselves, but in the other people in the theater, some parallels to what's going on amongst these four characters in the play?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. And I think I think it lets the play live right now. I think there's so much for I
Oh,
told Lucy the other day to do a speech to get like to the undecided voter in America. But there's so much about Williams' poetry. There's this great dialectic between Stanley and Blanche in this play about realism versus magic, about the life of the mind versus hard facts, about the value of imagination, about the value of art versus the wisdom of the body. Like there's this real conversation happening between these two people who have diametrically opposed worldviews that I think is very relevant today.
It's also on a certain level a ghost play, isn't it? I mean, isn't it the ghost of everything that got us to where we are today? I mean, first off, perfect Halloween week to be doing a ghost play,
Thank you.
but not literally a ghost play. But I can't help but think, well, all right, is it literally a ghost play? Given your
you're gonna have to come see it and tell us, but it is a haunting play.
We do think of it as a haunting, yeah.
yeah, that I agree, but it's not literally a ghost. There's not literally a ghost, unless you're telling us your interpretation is that these characters are either ghosts of themselves or that one or more of them may be ghosts and
Well, I think there
memories.
are ghosts. I think there are ghosts in the play. I think that I've been thinking a lot about ghosts because my cat just died.
Sorry.
And thank you. I've been thinking a lot about ghosts and what that means. And ghost memories are ghosts. I mean, Blanche is literally haunted in the play by the memory of someone. And actually, a lot of people haven't seen this play, so there's some things about the story that I won't give away. But she's literally haunted by a certain song and a certain person, and she can't rid herself of that person. And I think we, as especially theater people, and Lucy was haunted by Blanche, and like had to play her, and we are haunted by this story. We all seem, lots of artists want to present it again and again and explore it repeatedly. I think we're all haunted by Tennessee Williams and the things he asked of us and the demands he made of all of us.
So I guess that begs the question, what's next? Do you explore the whole Williams canon this way? Are there other playwrights? You mentioned Chekhov, Ibsen. Are there other playwrights that you think are just as ripe for this kind of presentation?
I think what's next is definitely, I'm very interested in, and we are very interested as producers, because Lucy, we co-produce this as well. We're very interested in what is an actor-driven model of theater, and what do you discover when you start with the actor and the text, when that is the impetus, and where it leads you is not necessarily to no sets, no props, no this, no that. It just leads you where it leads you. And I think that that's the model that we're interested in continuing to explore as producers.
Yeah.
One
And
last question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
with this play, we just want to keep doing it for
Yes.
as long as people will have us. We want to keep
Yeah, I was
doing it.
very moved by that. There was
Yeah.
this great interview with John Collins from Elevator Repair Service on Playbill this week about 25 years of doing GATS. And I'm going to go and get to see it again at the public next week. And it's extraordinary to see those actors doing that play for 25 years. And like we would like to do this play as long as there are spaces that will have us, we'll keep doing it.
Which is a good thing. So I want to close our time out by asking you about something you mentioned earlier. You said the great playwrights like Tennessee Williams wrote for the future, not for the past. If we were to use A Streetcar Named Desire as an example of writing for the future, what do you think A Streetcar Named Desire has to say about our present and by extension, our future?
Well, a line is ringing around my head right now. Don't hang back with the brutes is a
Yeah.
famous line of Blanche's to Stella about investing in your better nature.
Yeah. And the line that immediately rings in my head is I'll say this wrong, but it's yours, is deliberate cruelty is the unforgivable sin. Like the idea of, the kindness of strangers is the line everyone remembers, but there is a call for kindness and understanding There's a call for listening. I think the production calls for people to listen. And the tragedy of this play is that is watching these characters not be able to hear each other and the situation they get in because of it. So I guess Tennessee is asking us to listen to that call from other people, no matter how strange or bizarre or troubled they might be.
And not to expect that they're going to share the same opinion.
Right.
Yes, very true.
Right.
Yeah.
But to be available to one another.
Yeah.
Gee, I wonder why the play is being done right now.
Yeah.
What a time.
Oh, it's
Yes.
well, we're hoping to unleash some ghosts into America that will call all of our better natures forward.
Well, fingers crossed on that one. Well, thank you very much for your time. I hope you have 6 great shows in Los Angeles, and I hope to get to one of them.